YouTube. This is your host, Ranee B, bringing you that homicidal tea. And today's case is straight from the headlines of 2018. We are visiting Tulsa today. It's the second largest city in Oklahoma, and this case is from the first 48. Yay! The name of this episode was called Brothers Down. And what inspired this actually was a true event that happened at my work. There was just cleaning supplies from the cleaning crew that was just abandoned. And it turns out that they had locked themselves out and they couldn't get back in because they left their little electronic fob inside and they couldn't get in and clean up. But it looked like someone had just left in a hurry, and it reminded me of this episode, and I was like, I have to cover this. It's a first 48 team that I love. The Tulsa Homicide team is, in my opinion, one of the very best that there is. The whole squad has team members that are amazing in their own different ways. This is one of the first cases for then Sergeant, now Lieutenant, Brandon Watkins, who had just taken over for the badass Dave Walker as new head of Homicide. Keith and Glynn Williams contracted out cleaning crews to do overnight cleaning in office buildings in and around Tulsa, Oklahoma. On September 5th, 2018, around 11:14 p.m., 911 operators received a call from the DeVita Dialysis Center. A woman stated that there had been gunfire and a struggle outside of one of the offices that she'd been cleaning. When officers got to the scene, Keith Williams was the first victim that they had found on the scene that had been fatally shot. Now, he left behind a wife named Mary, and we'll talk about her in a little bit. But the second victim on the scene was identified as Glynn Williams, who was Keith's brother. He was also shot and pronounced dead at the scene. The Williams brothers, they owned a family-run janitorial business. When the cleaning lady that night, Jamila, she had spotted a suspicious vehicle parked outside. Now, whenever she saw something that made her nervous, she was always told to call the brothers. So when she called Keith Williams and Glynn Williams, they came out to check out the vehicle because they're one of those really, really overly cautious people. They don't like their, employees and their cleaning crews out possibly in danger. So when they got there, the occupants were in what they described as a dark SUV with some front end body damage. And from what Jamila saw, that both brothers had been attacked. She wasn't quite sure what was going on. She heard a loud bang. She didn't really know. She was in shock at this point as well. There was a barrage of bullets and spewed all over the crime scene, and they were 9mm bullets. And that's all the forensic evidence that they had. So they took them to Ballistics to see if that could help them out. The 911 caller, Jamila, was then taken to Homicide to be questioned and to get her statement officially. As they were taking her to the office, one of the cell phones kept ringing over and over, and the investigators left the phone undisturbed on the scene until they could take crime scene photos and whatnot, but someone continued to call steady over and over and over. And finally, an investigator that was with CSI released them to touch the phones. And when they answered it, the person calling identified themselves as Keith Williams' wife, Mary Jo. Now, when investigators spoke to Mary Jo, they broke the news to her, and it was heart-wrenching. You can hear her scream. It is horrific. In the episode, oh my God, you hear her sister-in-law come to talk to the phone, and listening to these women describe the tattoos and whatnot. I mean, when the detectives verified that these tattoos were on the victims and they were indeed victims of a homicide, the women, oh my God, they screamed again. And it was like a primal, stomach tightening scream that only comes from when like a mother or a wife learns something horrific about someone she loves. It was horrible. Is it weird that the very things that are horrific about these episodes is what I love so much? That raw emotion of it all is just what reels me back every time. There has to be some sort of psychological disorder that goes along with that stream of crazy. Detective Kennedy, who is by far not one of the nicest guys on the squad, but a damn good investigator, who does not play, by the way, he interviews Jamila. And she was the witness earlier that was on site in the that was cleaning the building in the dialysis center. And she was normally accompanied by her two sons when she cleaned buildings. But she explains that that night she just came alone and that she saw a car that did not belong there and called the owner of the cleaning company, as she was instructed to do. They were always instructed to do this. They wanted their crews to feel safe and whatnot, so that was just the protocol. Jamila was worried as well since she was the only one up there that night. And like I said earlier, in this particular night, she wasn't with her sons. This car that was parked out front, it looked like it had people living in it that were homeless. Like, it looked like they were living out of their car. There were clothes piled all the way up in the back seat. It was just beat up, front end damage. It was just weird. And it made her real nervous. So Keith texts her back and says that he's on his way. He's protective and just a decent man to work for. And he would have gone to the end of the earth to protect his employees that were in danger. And so Jamila pleaded with the detectives to find the guys who did this. She also explained that Keith was a decent, faithful man of God and that he was just a good man to his very core, did not deserve this. Detective Kennedy is clearly frustrated as this is a huge whodunit. No leads whatsoever. He really wasn't feeling Jamila, and it was early on, so I mean, he didn't rule her out or anything, but you know how it goes. The detectives decided to call the wives again to see who they might have had issues with. And Glenn's wife, Cicely, she said they were about to fire that cleaning crew that was working that night. And when Cicely asked about Jamila and her sons, the detectives said that the sons weren't there. Huge red flag, because the wife emphatically says, no, they're always with her. Always. Cicely also elaborates about how they were planning on releasing that whole crew and Jamila and her sons, that things just weren't working out. So after that call, the detectives looked into Jamila's sons' backgrounds. Neither of them had anything, nothing, not even traffic tickets. They bring Jamila back in to speak with her, and they attempt to go a little bit harder and more aggressive with their line of questioning to break her and get more potential information out of her. Well, when they tell her about the fact that Keith and Glynn were about to fire the cleaning crew, she looks genuinely shocked. Actually, she looks more hurt when she learns that the family may not have liked her as much as she thought that they did. She defends her son against any allegations. She even offers her phone to the team to download all of the information that there is on it and get all the messages and stuff to help with the investigation. Detective Nathan Schilling downloads text messages and all that stuff, and he finds that Jamila, all she said was that she felt responsible for the killings because she called Keith, but nothing more. Jamila continues to cry and states that she is not in any part of this, and she again pleads with them to find out who did this. Her body language really shows that she's like inwardly collapsing. I mean, really not beefing up to detectives at all. And it's a very fragile and submissive body language, and it just doesn't seem like she had anything to do with it. Days go by. Nothing. No word from the streets, no informants, nothing from the gang unit. The gang unit, which by the way had Detective Styx Larkin from Live PD at the helm. He just retired though, but anyway. They had nothing. Patrol put out their feelers, days go by, weeks go by, nothing. Then finally, 2 weeks later, Sergeant, now Lieutenant Watkins, gets a call from Ballistics with a huge lead. 2 people were shot and lived, thank God, at an Incredible Pizza location about a week earlier. 6 days after the Incredible Pizza shooting, patrol pulls over a guy matching the suspect's description, driving a vehicle fitting the vehicle description of the car fleeing from the Incredible Pizza shooting. The car turns out to be a stolen SUV, and it's also similar to the description of the one that they heard that was fleeing from the DeVita Dialysis Center. Detective John Brown, my second favorite detective. Ooh, shout out to Tulsa PD's Jason White for being my first. Yeah, I love him. Oh my gosh, I love him so much. Anyway, but John Brown, he's awesome. But anyway, John Brown is in the same area when Watkins gets the call and overheard this name being thrown around. He recognizes it and says, oh my gosh, I'm actually looking for that perp with that same name. Ondriel Smith. In an attempted homicide that had occurred a while back. Detective Kennedy looks up the woman that was arrested with Ondriel at the time that they pulled him over a few days ago. They always start with the chicks. They just break easier. Sorry, ladies, but we like to talk. Well, not so fast. They try to get her in to the office to get her transferred over from Gen Pop in the jail, but she's on suicide watch. So they have to wait until that watch expires until they can speak to her. The episode cuts to a vigil that Glenn's family is holding for him and his wife, Cicely, and his daughters. Oh my God! It's heartbreaking. And just as you are starting to grasp how much pain that these people are in, boom! You're swept back to that episode in the homicide office, and we all learn that they have freaking released Suicide Susie! Oh my gosh! I don't know her real name, but we're going to call her that. She might be the one that may be the break in the whole case and spills the beans against Ondriel. Yeah, she's gone, took off. Well, the homicide detectives, they fan out looking for her, patrols looking for her, and they locate her mother's phone number and try her there. They find that she's actually at her mother's house. So they drive out to the mom's house and they continue, let's just call her Susie for the rest of this episode because they had no name released. Like I said, probably a good thing though because she's, yeah, a pretty good witness. But anyway, so they go out to this house to interview her and they find that she is beaten the hell up, like black and blue, like looks like she got in a gang initiation fight. They press her about the black eyes and whatnot and ask her if Ondriel did it. She said that she did in fact receive them from Ondriel, and she starts telling them everything, stating that she was in the backseat during the shooting at the dialysis center, that he had planned on staying there that night to sleep, but then he got spooked whenever Jamila went up to his car window and asked him if he was okay before she called Keith. Ondriel jumps out of the car after being approached by these two Williams brothers. She heard gunshots, and then once Ondriel got back in the car, he threatened Susie and said that she just better stay in the back seat and shut the hell up. Well, a few days later, she also witnessed Ondriel shoot those other people at Incredible Pizza. He threatened her again by saying she better not say anything, and to make damn sure that she understood how serious he was, he started mocking her, saying, "Oh, you think I won't shoot you? You won't think I won't shoot you? Boom, try that." He shot her, dropped her off at the hospital, and threatened her, saying, "You better tell them that you tried to commit suicide, or I'm going to come finish the job." Susie had also said that he had been saying for a while now that he was just itching to kill someone, just wanted to feel what it was like, for no reason. Just wanted to do it. They bring Ondriel in since he was in jail on a stolen car charge, and they begin asking him about it, and he denied knowing anything about that, shootings, the gun, nothing, whatever. He did say that the gun in the car was his girlfriend's gun, and he was well aware of it. Well, Detective Kennedy, the one that's kind of an asshole, this is where I love how unfriendly he is. He says, matter of fact, the gun that Ondriel had on him was used in the murder. When Ondriel tries to deny it, Detective Kennedy just says, "You know what? Here's some simple questions for you," and trying to establish a timeline. But when Ondriel keeps denying everything, Detective Kennedy just deadpan says, "I know you did it. Period. You got ID'd at Incredible Pizza. People saw you. People saw your car." And Ondriel says that he's done talking. And Kennedy says, "I don't care if you're done talking or not. Then don't talk. Just listen. You're going to be charged with a murder. Double homicide." He then walks the hell out of the room like a boss. I love him. Later, as they start taking him back to his jail cell with a slew of new charges, Ondriel starts mouthing and jawing again about, this and that, and saying, "Well, y'all have to prove it, right?" Well, Kennedy says, "Well, what about ballistics? That's the scientific study of gun barrel and bullet fingerprints, pretty much. Maybe that'll work for you for proof. Or maybe we can get a statement from your girlfriend, like we already have, that checks out with the evidence. What more do you want?" Ondriel just smirks, and Detective Kennedy says, "I think you're going to have some problems, and you'll probably spend the rest of your life in prison if you don't get the death penalty." Ondriel just laughs. Well, the episode ends with them saying stuff about he's innocent until proven guilty and notes about him awaiting trial. Detective Kennedy then calls the family and tells Mary Jo that they found the guy and they booked him into jail. And Mary expresses her gratitude and is so appreciative. He then calls Cicely and lets her know that they have arrested someone. She's also very grateful. And then the episode ends, right? No. Detective Kennedy, while not the sweetest guy on the planet, he's a pretty decent guy. He calls Jamila to tell her how much he appreciates her help with the case. I mean, she helped with the initial SUV description that matched up with the Incredible Pizza witnesses. So, I mean, like, it all was puzzle pieces, and she really did help. He also felt that it was important for Jamila to know that neither her nor her sons had anything to do with that tragedy, and that the family and the public all know this. The episode then closes with Mary watching them set her husband's beautiful headstone. And she's standing beside it watching it. And again, she's very emotional. But what's even more poetic, if you will, is that since then, actually just a few weeks ago, Mary joined Keith in heaven, recently passing in August. And what is even better than the intertwining of two souls that have been separated by planes of existence is, yeah, the bell sure did toll for the Ondriel. You're facing the death penalty twice. But they are actually trying the two murders together. But I mean, I should have named this channel the Three Shots. Well, look into one woman's obsession with lethal injection. But I mean, seriously, yeah, Ondriel got what he had coming. Old dude is just a menace, man. But I mean, you know, the state says that Smith has 9 prior felony convictions, that his actions are what are, quote, a great risk of death, unquote, to more than one person, which means there is a probability that he will continue to commit acts of violence. Here's more quotes that would constitute him as a continuing threat to society, end quote. Come on, come on. One of his previous convictions was for attempted robbery with a firearm, which can be used as an aggravator in request for a death sentence. In a 33-day period, the defendant shot 5 people, 2 of which died. They also talk about the evidence that's showing that Smith shot another person 4 months prior to these fatal shootings. Now, while Smith was accused in that one case that John Brown had a few months prior, it was actually dismissed pending further investigation, but it can still be used as an aggravating factor in requesting the death penalty. And this was all in 2018 and 2019. The most recent update in this case is that he is still awaiting trial and racking up more charges. Apparently, in September of 2020, prosecutors said Ondriel Smith had both marijuana and meth inside of his county jail cell. What's wrong with you? I guess, you know what, maybe he needs some stress relief. Probably. Good. They said that on 2 occasions that he also threatened detention officers for taking away his dope, and then another inmate actually threw urine on the guard. That's so gross. Good Lord. Well, the last thing that I could dig up on the Oklahoma site was that he was entered into court records on August 2nd, 2021. Judge Don Moody, defendant president in custody and represented by Stan Monroe and Mike Manning. State represented by Kevin Gray, court reporter Brenda Caldwell. They're all present. Case is called again for Allen discovery hearing and status conference. Defendant waives right to speedy trial. Allen discovery hearing and hearing on state's motion for joinder set for 12/14/21 at 9 a.m. in room 406 for all y'all that are local. Jury trial is reset to 9/12/2022 at 9 a.m. again in room 406 for y'all local folks. Luckily, the bond is to remain, which is none, and the defendant was remanded to custody. Now, I will link these documents for the trial in description. I love legal docs like this. It's like a rabbit hole that I like and I really have come to love and recognize. I'm just a nosy beast that loves looking up crap about people. No life, none. The link in the description is only for a few months of 2018. He has a way longer rap sheet. But regardless, though, yuck. Old boy is still waiting on his trial and he's primed for the old death penalty. But some dude might have screwed it up in Oklahoma for everyone. Oh my gosh. Clayton Lockett was the 111th person to be put to death in Oklahoma by lethal injection. He opened his eyes long after he was supposed to be dead. Lockett had been convicted more than a decade prior for murdering Stephanie Neiman. And she was a street, smart, hard knock life, tough girl who'd recently graduated from high school and unwittingly crossed paths with Lockett and his little buddies one night. And he and his stupid accomplices, they were robbing a house. So him and his crew, they drove Neiman and her friend Bobby Bornt, who was with her, out to a side road and dug Neiman a grave. Lockett wanted to keep them quiet about the robbery, but Neiman stood her ground. Old girl was not having it. Lockett shot her twice with a shotgun and had her buried in the roadside grave that he had dug while she was still alive. Okay, bye, Felicia. Death penalty. Yeah. Lockett then threatened Bornt not to tell a soul lest he end up in a shallow grave of his own. Later during Lockett's court proceedings, Bobby Bornt actually wrote a victim impact statement saying that he believes lethal injection is too easy of a way for Lockett to die. Well, he kind of got his wish. Inside the death chamber, why do I get so excited when I say death chamber? I just felt my eyes get bigger. That's kind of fucked up, but anyway, I'll go watch some psychology YouTube channels. Anyway, the weird side of YouTube, that's always really fun. But anyway, inside the death chamber, all 3 shots were administered, and to everyone's astonishment, Lockett began to writhe and buck on the table. He was supposed to be blacked out and unable to breathe. His heart should have been already stopped. Yet there he was. And that wasn't all. He was screaming too. This shit is effing with my mind. These drugs aren't working. Oh my goodness, the blinds were snapped shut, shielding journalists and witnesses from what was happening in the death chamber. But about 15 minutes later, then Oklahoma Department of Corrections Director Robert Patton called off the execution. But it was too late. By 7:06 p.m., 43 minutes after the execution had begun, Lockett was dead. So there you go, Bobby. Have some karma for you. See, now that pisses me off because, okay, am I the only one who's like this? So, I mean, 43 minutes, so? I mean, and? Like, that doesn't emotionally move me whatsoever. I wish that all of them went that way. Stephanie, she was still alive when she was buried. She had way less of a transition to the next plane of existence than old Lockett did. And she had no choice. He chose his fate. She didn't do anything. So yeah, bye Lockett, good riddance. The only thing that I regret is that he didn't scream more and it didn't last longer. Judge me, I don't care. Anyway, I mean, the more cases that you research and the more you really seem to connect with these victims, I mean, yeah. So the guys and gals that do these crimes, I'm just numb to them. I mean, you can thank Roger Coleman for that one. That is it for this case. I love Tulsa PD. And I'm writing a bunch of other scripts based off of the other episodes that struck a chord with me from that precinct. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and having a chat with me on my channel. Support the channel by hitting that like button and subscribe. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'll put the links in the description. I will be posting new videos every week, so I've set myself up for a schedule. So let me know if you have any suggestions. I mean, especially from overseas or not as highly populated areas. I love those. So until next time, don't kill anybody, y'all. Just wait and let the state do it. Too soon? Good. Bye.